Go, go, go.
That amazing video was captured in Chicago, Illinois by John Farina of Status Coup News, and they report that those two Gestapo agents decided to chase that man for no apparent reason. He was just peacefully standing outside of the Broadview Processing Center before they inexplicably chose to take away his First Amendment right. But as you saw, it didn't turn out so well for them. And for a second, I thought that the ICE agent who collapsed was momentarily trying to Naruto run to pick up speed. I was like, what is he doing? I'm like, oh, he's collapsing dramatically under the weight of Earth's crushing gravity, I guess. That is so amazing. And I don't know if his colleague was stopping to see if he was okay, as if he was injured, or if he was tired too, and he's like, should we give up? But the dude, like, they were never going to catch him. He just kept running, and he had more stamina than them. And, like, they knew that it was pointless. They weren't going to be able to outrun this individual who's probably decades older than them. And I find that so hilarious. But even though this is an embarrassing video for ICE that I thoroughly enjoyed, it really does speak to how unqualified they are for their jobs. And I think that that's a benefit to us in some ways, right? They're physically unfit. But other viral videos expose how they don't know anything about the law or the Constitution, and they seemingly only got the job because they hate immigrants and love Donald Trump. And it's why nobody respects these fascist pigs. It's why nobody in America takes them seriously. In fact, some people are straight up roasting ICE agents to their faces.
What's your real name?
What's your barber name? What's your barber name? What's your barber name? What's your name? What's your street name? I did. See it from ICE agent looking at his.
If you look closely, you can actually see his soul leave his body. I think it was the moment that he made eye contact and then looked away and pretended like he couldn't hear that they were clowning on him. That was honestly so brutal. But before you start to feel bad for him or any of these other cowards, understand that you shouldn't, because they're not just bad people. That would be one thing. They're also criminals. And even though it seems impossible to fully comprehend the depths of their depravity, I'm going to try to make it comprehensible. So the Miami Herald published a story about 64-year-old Subbu Vadam, who is a man that spent more than 4 decades in prison for a murder that he did not commit. And after it was revealed that prosecutors withheld evidence during his trial that would have exonerated him, he was finally released after 43 years. But before he could even go home, guess what happened? He got snatched up by ICE. ICE cited a legacy deportation order dating back to the 1980s, tied not only to the murder charge, but also to an earlier drug conviction from Vadam's youth. Before his arrest for murder, he had pleaded guilty at age 19 to intent to distribute LSD, a charge his family describes as a youthful mistake. Although that conviction carried its own immigration consequences, Subbu, who was born in India but arrived in the United States when he was 9 months old, was never deported because he was serving a life sentence. Now, after his exoneration, ICE has revived the decades-old order. So for all intents and purposes, he's what we'd call a dreamer. He was brought to America at a very young age, not on his own accord, and he's basically an American. An American who, after serving most of his adult life behind bars for a murder he didn't commit, is now being detained by ICE because they chose to bring up this old-ass drug charge that he got when he was a literal teenager. And that's the justification that they're using to detain him even longer so they can meet their quota. Just let that sink in for a moment. But this story, it just speaks to one angle, their cruelty. We also need to talk about a different angle, which is how unhinged they are, and there are countless examples to illustrate this, such as this story from Willamette Week, where they report about how ICE agents blocked an ambulance from leaving when it was transporting someone from an ICE detention center to Legacy Emmanuel Hospital in Portland, Oregon. And it's unclear why this person needed to go to the hospital in the first place, but ICE agents didn't want them to leave and chose to stand in front of the first responders so they couldn't get out. So the ambulance driver decided to just put the vehicle in park, which caused it to lurch forward. This is what happens when you put a car in park. But the dumbass ICE agents took that as a threat, So much so that one of them literally threatened to shoot the ambulance driver, claiming that the ambulance was trying to hit him with his car. Now, unless that ICE agent has never driven a car before or been inside of a car or seen a car in real life, I have to imagine that that person was lying and they knew that the ambulance driver wasn't trying to run them over with their car and they were just using that as an excuse to be violent. I mean, did he expect the ambulance driver that he was blocking to sit there with his foot on the brakes for who knows how long? It's ridiculous, right? But these power-hungry pricks apparently think that it's okay to threaten first responders now, even though they're the ones keeping the first responders from doing their job. Now, if the shoe were on the other foot, do you think that ICE would be as patient? If they were the ones where their vehicle was being blocked, do you think that they would like patiently wait there and put their vehicles in park? We already know the answer to this question. It's an unequivocal no. I say this because last week we shared a video of a motorcycle blocking them, and they responded by tear gassing the entire vicinity, including a 2-year-old who inhaled harmful chemicals. Now, over the weekend, when a different car was blocking 2 Border Patrol agents from a journalist that they were kidnapping, just watch what they did to that car.
What's your name?
Debbie Brockman, I work for WGN. Please let them know.
I got you. Yep. Debbie Browning?
Brockman,
WGN. Do you guys want to share your names too, or just gonna cover your face?
Could cover your face a couple years. The real thing.
Okay, Mr. Condemnation.
Yeah. Oh my God.
this is ridiculous. Honestly.
Yeah.
Stop.
Good job. I hope you learn
Seriously, get the out.
Fuck you.
Get out of our
Fuck.
Hopefully your wife and children make it home.
What is this vehicle, honestly? Yeah.
Get out of our neighborhood. Get out of our city. Come on, man. Come on. Get out. We're not welcome here. Let's go. No, this is some bullshit.
Oh! Yep.
Very professional federal agents we have in this country, and definitely nothing like the Gestapo. Nope. But by now, everybody knows that this is what they do. It's not a secret, right? They're completely unrestrained and unhinged and cruel, and there are countless examples to demonstrate just how bad they are. A DHS agent shot a priest in the head with a pepper ball for the crime of peacefully protesting. And increasingly, DHS agents are surveilling protesters from roofs with sniper rifles, as if exercising your First Amendment right makes you a potential criminal. They're also continuing to use tear gas on crowds who peacefully try to stop their human abductions. And I can't stress this enough, but when you have a violent, masked, secret police force whose agents don't identify themselves, who kidnaps people and journalists and places them in unmarked vehicles, who intimidates, harasses, and threatens people, you are witnessing quintessential authoritarianism. They are by no means upholding the law. In fact, they're operating outside the bounds of the law and the Constitution, making everything that they do completely illegal. They are denying immigrants due process and habeas corpus, as well as their Fourth Amendment rights. They're detaining citizens and public officials and journalists, and they're not reading anyone their Miranda rights, let alone telling them if they're even being arrested in the first place. They're just fucking taking them, and this is all deeply unconstitutional. And them having some green light from Trump or Kristi Noem doesn't automatically make what they're doing legal or just. It's still illegal, it's still unconstitutional, but operating outside of the bounds of law is how secret police and other dictatorships terrorize civilian populations as well, making people feel as if they have to watch their words or look over their shoulders, and trying to foster this level of societal fear and paranoia is like how dictators assert control over populations. And it's happening here now, when a lot of us were naively thinking that this couldn't ever happen here. But it's important to understand that Trump isn't going to be in office forever, and there will come a day when his Gestapo might have to answer for the crimes that they're committing. And that's the exact point that this veteran made in an interview with Status Coup News. And this rant that he has about ICE is truly incredible. Let's watch.
And for you kidnappers known as ICE agents, understand this: you will never be fucking forgiven for your crimes, ever. The soldiers, I can understand, they took an oath. They're duty bound to be there. They can't just quit. You could fucking reclass tomorrow and go work for FEMA or do something else. If you choose to put a mask on, if you choose to send people to concentration camps, if you choose to do that shit, you will be a mortal fucking enemy forever. When that fucking demon is gone from the White House, you will be hunted, just like you hunted them. You will be hunted. You will never have a fucking moment of peace, period. Out of everybody I despise the most, ICE is at the top of the list right now. You guys are fucking traitors, man. ICE is an absolute scourge. You should hold your head in shame forever for the shit you're doing. You will never be forgiven for that shit. If you had a shred of dignity, you will reclass tomorrow.
And that's exactly why they wear these masks. They still want to be able to fraternize with their neighbors and live in the communities that they're terrorizing. They don't want to be held accountable one day for the crimes that they're committing. So behind those masks are the faces of spineless fucking fascist cowards who are carrying out Trump's fascist agenda in the shadows because, as dumb as they are, they know that they're not above the law like Trump is. So they're protecting their identities in hopes that they'll be able to evade prosecution one day. But you have to understand that this is only the beginning. ICE's budget exploded from the big bullshit bill, and the recruitment that they're doing now is soon going to turn into thousands of new Gestapo thugs in the streets. And they're not just hunting down immigrants anymore. As Truth Out reports, ICE is increasingly starting to target activists, specifically ones who are tracking their illegal activity on social media. And this story coincides with Trump's NSPM 7, which essentially designates anyone not in the MAGA cult as a potential terrorist, which then opens them up to government surveillance. But I mean, surveillance almost seems lenient compared to an option floated by Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Just like we did with cartels, we're going to take the same approach, President Trump, with Antifa. Destroy the entire organization from top to bottom. We're going to take them apart. Thanks to your bold leadership and the designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, which is exactly what they are, Americans will no longer tolerate their unhinged violence.
I mean, they're bombing cartels, so does this mean that they're going to bomb Antifa? Is she broadcasting her intent to kill American citizens? Also, who do they define as Antifa? Because even though anti-fascism has a robust history throughout the world, it just means anti-fascist at the end of the day, in simplest terms. So it's an action, not an organization, and they know that. And I think that most Americans would probably identify as anti-fascist. At least I hope that that's the case. But in terms of like who they're going to target, I think we have an idea, right? It's professors like Mark Bray, a historian who's taught courses on fascism and wrote the Anti-Fascist Handbook. And, you know, after he tried to follow in the footsteps of other political scientists and historians who fled the country, he was blocked from leaving and wrote on Blue Sky that his gate reservation had suddenly disappeared for no reason. Now, thankfully, he eventually did leave for Spain, but I can't help but think that them doing things like this to high-profile people, it also happened to Hassan Piker, is their way to send a message to the rest of us. They want you to know that they do indeed have control over your life. And if you oppose the regime, they have the ability to make your life a living hell. So I'd imagine that they're planning to target people like Professor Bray at first, who use their voices and platforms to expose this regime. We used to call that freedom of speech, by the way, but it's no longer guaranteed to us since the Constitution is no longer in effect. In fact, Trump was just bragging about taking away that right.
We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the courts said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. They've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts.
In other words, we know that flag burning is protected speech under the First Amendment, and this right was even reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in 1989 in Texas v. Johnson. But we don't care, and we're going to take away that right anyway because what Trump says goes. The law is what he says it is. But don't let these bastards scare you into silence, because as risky as it is to speak out these days, it is so much more dangerous for all of us to remain silent. So keep sharing videos of ICE and BPD and DHS on social media. Keep condemning this administration on social media, and bring a friend to this Saturday's No Kings protest. Now is not the time to cower in fear and hide, because that's what the masked Nazis in our communities are doing. And unlike them, we're actually brave and courageous. And it's time to show up and assert ourselves and let it be known that we're not going to bow down to this tin pot dictator, and we are going to stand up for immigrants in our communities and trans people and vulnerable people everywhere. And when we look back at this moment someday, I want it to be known that I was one of the people vociferously against this fascist takeover, and you should be too. So don't back down. Don't silence yourself. Get even louder, because that is how you defeat fascism, not by cowering in fear.
Woke mob. Woke mob.
Woke ideology.
Woke ideology.
Woke ideology.
Woke ideology.
Woke ideology.
Woke test.
Woke ideology.
Woke Olympics.
Woke ideology.
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 Weaponized wokery.
Woke ideology.